All right, everybody. Welcome to Trainer Talk episode 5. We have special guests here today, Colin Matson. We have the Colin and the Colin, both of whom are fitness coaches. And so I'm sure we're going to get a lot of good fitness insights from Colin Matson today. Colin, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm stoked to be here.
Nice, nice. We're excited to have you. We're excited to have you. Um, Maybe we can kind of just go ahead and dive right in from the get go here. Maybe just tell us a little bit about what you do, who you help, and how your kind of coaching services work, man.
Yeah, so I've been like a fitness dabbler for years, going back over a decade actually, kind of starting and stopping, going through periods of motivation, but struggling with consistency. And wasn't until about a few years ago when I made a transition in my career and got into software and the tech industry that I really started getting a bit more serious. Like I started it as a hobby and then like didn't stop this time as I had in sort of previous instances. So it became more and more clear to me that that was where my true passion was, like learning about health and training and pushing myself in that way. And yeah, I just got to the point where I wanted to do more with it and struggled with what that would look like for a while. And then I discovered Twitter and the whole kind of community of coaches and people creating content on Twitter, and actually saw a bit of an avenue there. So it
Yeah,
was about just about a year ago I started the account and started posting a lot, just no real expectations at first, but gradually that has led into, a bit of a business here. So I have about 15 clients I've worked with, mostly men who either work in tech or desk jobs, and kind of addressing some of the challenges they face just with you know, struggling to get enough steps, with like not having a lot of time for the gym, and that kind of suite of things. So yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, very cool, very cool. I think for me too, like I work with a somewhat similar kind of niche of like people in, let's say, high stress, busy jobs. There's some overlap with tech there for sure, but I think like really going to like kind of where your strengths are and where you've kind of seen success in your own fitness journey, right? And like kind of finding people who you can relate to and who you can kind of work with. Because like for me, I worked also in finance for a few years, worked long hours, busy schedule, stressful job and everything. And like I realized that that was the kind of person that I'd be able to really help with their fitness goals. And Colin son, I'm sure you're probably in a similar boat with your kind of ideal clients too.
Oh yeah, especially being small my entire life and learning how to actually put on muscle and how much I need to be eating and when. It's definitely been a lot easier to help my clients in that realm compared to if they worked a desk job. I don't understand the challenges they face because I don't work a desk job.
Sure, absolutely, man. Yeah, and I think what was I going to say? I think it really just at the end of the day boils down to like there's probably certain people who you're going to be a great fit for who might not be a great fit for somebody else, and then kind of vice versa. Like maybe like somebody who's a bad fit for me might be a good fit with one of you guys, and kind of vice versa there. So I guess like Colin, maybe like going back for a second, like you mentioned that like once you really got into that tech job a few years ago, you started to really take your fitness a lot more seriously. Like what was kind of the I guess the impetus or the kind of the main thing that drove you to really start making that change?
I think a big part of it for me was just situational. My previous career was really hectic, so I didn't have a predictable schedule. I didn't have predictable income really. So, just even being able to afford a good gym and, higher quality food and all that stuff was a little more challenging. And then the lifestyle too was a bit more challenging. So I was a full-time musician, just for context. That doesn't
Yeah,
seem too vague there. So a big part of it was, when I had that solid schedule and that predictability in my life, it created a lot more bandwidth for a hobby. And, fitness, because I'd been a bit of a dabbler and I'd made some progress, but, knew I wasn't giving it my all, that felt like a bit of the obvious choice at that time. Like, let me try to get into this as well. And I quickly realized too, just that how much you better you feel like translates just to everything else. And I think that was one of the big keys for me that made it a lot more about just fitness. Like I felt better focus at work. I felt more confident just being out in the world. When it came to like dating, I was single at that time. Um, so yeah, that's been one of the biggest things for me, just seeing that clearly and why, I continue to want to push myself and not only to challenge myself in fitness, but really just with that understanding that like literally everything you do is going to be better if you can improve your health and fitness from a physical standpoint as well as a mental standpoint, just purely mindset.
What would you say was the hardest transition from going to working in software to becoming your own fitness coach?
Well, yeah, right now, so I'm still working in software. So I'm doing the coaching as a side hustle. Um, and that is a challenge right now a bit, just I guess purely on bandwidth, on time. So, trying to juggle both. I think fortunately, because I'm working remotely, I don't have a commute to factor in. So I can be kind of like wake up a bit earlier and kind of work on whether it's programming for clients or doing some content or whatever that work might be. And then if it's time to switch over into my day job mode, that switch takes like 2 minutes as opposed to, a 45-minute commute to the office or what that might entail. So I'm
Gotcha.
fortunate there. Yeah.
I really think the online world, like the ability to kind of leverage that is so huge. Because I think like maybe the analogy, say like 50 years ago, right, would have been, you go and you work your desk job like in your office, and then the equivalent to having like an online fitness business would have been like being a personal trainer like at a gym like in person, right? And so you'd have
Hmm.
to commute to and from, and like you wouldn't just be able to, in the middle of the day switch between, okay, I'm building a program for a client, so like now I'm doing I'm writing this code for this project you're working on, right? Like uh it's very different. So I totally relate to like having that flexibility with the online world is huge.
Yeah. This is the year though, 2024. Hopefully, like my goal is to make that leap.
Dude,
Um, don't have kids at the moment, so I can make it a bit of a leap, right? Like I can maybe afford to have it feel like little bit of a risk.
sure.
Yeah, I'm hoping this year I'm gonna make that transition.
Yeah, dude, that's sweet. Yeah, go. I mean, my like obviously like I don't know your exact situation or anything, but like it sounds like like go for it, like if you can. But either way, like I think a lot of people, especially like on Twitter, they kind of like to talk negatively about like 9 to 5s and that whole thing. I think there's something to be said for having a stable job, and then also just doing like having a business kind of on the side. And then eventually, obviously, you can scale that and do it full time. But
Hmm.
you know, like if somebody for people out there watching this, maybe like if you're in a job that like maybe it's stable, but like maybe it doesn't have everything that you're looking for, or if you have some extra time and like you've always kind of wanted to start something, like there's never a bad time to start doing these kinds of things, right? Like whether it's fitness, whether it's something else that you help people with, some other coaching business, or maybe it's something completely different. Like, you know, there's never a bad time to do this, because it sounds like, Colin, like you basically kind of I think you said you quote unquote like stumbled into it, right? Like it wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna leave my 9 to 5 today and just go all in on this, which like some people go that route, but there's also, I think, people, it's good to see that this is kind of also an option of how you can do it as well.
Yeah, that was very much that sort of thing, how it came to be, because and that's part of the cool thing about posting online because it's very reflective. That's what I found. So I was really sold on this idea of creating a digital personal brand. I saw the value of it. And, I was writing on like medium.com and then came across Twitter and you kind of look at yourself like, well, what am I really interested in? What do I naturally gravitate to when I'm writing? And then for me, it was more and more about kind of a combination of personal development and health and fitness. And then when that translates into more, you're thinking about, well, how can I help people? How can I maybe create a business out of this? You just kind of follow the steps and you follow what you're curious about, what you're passionate about, what you've done. And then you kind of end up in this place that, for me, looking back a year ago, it's not somewhere I thought I would be. And all it's really felt like I was doing was just, you know, going one day at a time and pursuing what I was interested in and what kind of felt like the natural course. And it's pretty cool how that can unfold sometimes. And yeah, you can start, I think, really small. You can just kind of let it develop just based on, what you want to do and how your life is working right now.
Absolutely, absolutely, 100%. And like, I think for me, like it was kind of a similar route to like getting into coaching. It was like a very it wasn't like my immediate first reaction. Like similar to you, I had a blog when I first got into coaching. But before I did that, I had a blog, and I think Colin Sen, I think you had a similar kind of trajectory too, or like how did you kind of get into coaching yourself? I think you told me this before, but
Yeah, I think starting out, I know I was in college still, and I was at the point I was like, man, like, I don't want to be in college. Like, this is stupid. Like, I regret doing this. Like, I'm spending $1,000 a month just to pay for this education, and I haven't learned a singular thing. And I was like, and I really like this healthcare. I was going for physical therapy, and I was like, man, like the healthcare isn't really interesting anymore. Like, I was doing my like clinicals before I could get fully accepted to the program. I was like, man, like this person's in here with back pain, but back pain, like where there was hurting at, it wasn't what we were treating the back pain and not the root cause of it. And I was like, I've seen this in every single one of my clinicals, this move on and like figure out why you're hurting and not just to get you out of the pain. And so that ultimately was like, okay, like this isn't what I want to do. I want to actually help you and get you better. And so I was like, you know what, fuck it. Let's just drop out and we're just going to completely go to working online and trying to start my business. And worst case scenario is I can always come back to this. I was 19 at the time. And I was like, all right, I mean, I've been out of high school for a year, so I'm able to afford to just drop out and try it for a year or two. And if it doesn't work, I can go back to it.
yeah, for sure, for sure. I think it's like kind of entrepreneurship takes many forms, right? It's like you can go that route. You can get started when you're young and drop out of college and go all in on it, or you can kind of start from more the position that Colin Matson was starting, where you have that stable 9 to 5, and then you get into it later on. Kind of on that topic, the next question I want to ask you, Colin, was, and this is kind of because I think there's a lot of parallels between fitness and entrepreneurship, right? Like, how would you say that's like kind of pursuing your own fitness goals and improving your own health and fitness has impacted your ability to grow your business and to kind of get started with that?
Yeah, well, I think that's a great question. That's part of the reason that I think fitness is a catalyst for people when they want to improve their lives. You often hear about people, being in maybe not so great a place, and then the first steps they take are getting healthier, optimizing their fitness, and that translates into everything. Because I think just a few of the really fundamental principles you learn just about having to show up like consistently every day. Like it's such a cliche, but it's also so true. Like it's a process, not a destination. So it feels like such a platitude to say that, but at the same time, it's like absolutely true in many areas of life. And I think you really internalize that through fitness. Like, you don't just achieve something and like get lean and then say, well, okay, well, now I'm at this body fat percentage. I get to just eat whatever I want and stop training now or whatever, right? Like it's something that you have to keep up with. And I think with business, it's the same thing, or growing on social media. Like it's just, you have to keep showing up. You have to keep doing the boring work, the outreach, the saying, your message 1,000 different ways on different platforms over and over. And if you're tired or you don't really feel like it, the results don't really care about that. Like you have to do the work if you want to see something happen from that and come to fruition. So I think probably the biggest thing, I mean, yeah, the fitness journey and entrepreneurship, insofar as I've had experience with it, seem like identical in that way, really. And it's just about, are you going to do the work you have to do to prepare yourself to show up as you have to like go to bed on time, to fuel yourself correctly so you can show up in the capacity that you need to serve yourself best? Or are you going to focus more on short-term gratification, like, let your bad habits kind of take you out a bit? And for me, even getting that initial clarity with fitness, then seeing how it also translates to entrepreneurship has brought a lot of clarity to me, like just in terms of my values and how I want to prioritize my life. And I've probably become a lot more boring in some sense over the past year, but it's also been like I've been really happy, right? Because I think that's really fulfilling when you just are doing the things that serve you well and seeing the results from that over time. I think that's like a really beautiful thing to see.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think, for me, I would say it's a similar kind of thing. Like I think with fitness, the way that like I see fitness paralleling the business the most, it's kind of like, you look at like probably the progress you made in the gym over the past, let's say like 5 years, right? And like, probably from where you started to where you are now, like probably for everybody here, like we've made significant progress, right? But if you look maybe at like yesterday to today, or like the day before yesterday to yesterday, or et cetera, right? It's like it's just a really small incremental improvement. And I think people give up very quickly, whether it's in business or in fitness or whatever, when they don't see those results like right away. And I think the biggest lesson that I kind of see in the parallel is like you have to play that long game. But
Yeah, that's huge. And not let those like remind yourself of that long-term processing. That's a good habit to build, right? Like look back on a longer time frame and then
yeah,
just see like, no, this has been working. So the fact that I had a bad day yesterday or like last Tuesday shouldn't get in my head too much because if I look back a year or two ago, that's what matters.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Colin, son, what do you think about that? Like how kind of fitness has helped you in your entrepreneurial journey as well?
I know, I mean, I've always been really big into fitness itself and like the body and health in general, but definitely like I can see it as especially like around midday or so is when I like to go to the gym the best. And I can notice that around 12:30 as I hit a mental fog, usually my mind starts to, I mean, I've been working at that point for probably 6.5 hours. And so I hit that mental fog and like, okay, like I got to step away. I got to go do something else and clear myself. And going to the gym, going for a run, getting fitness into my life at that point has really helped me stay clear, help me stay clear. That's a bunch of clarity, and I'm able to come back from the gym and I'm able to just, get right back focused on my work and not sit here and stare at a computer screen for another 4 hours of just doing busy work and not actually working on the business.
For sure. For sure. Um, so yeah, I think maybe the next question I have to go in here, and as far as like time management, it's kind of like what you were saying, Colin. Like, how do you guys both, I guess, think about kind of dividing time between, because Colin said, I know you also are working at like a gym as well, like in addition to having your own online business. Obviously, Colin Matson, you said you're working a 9 to 5 as well as doing your fitness business. Like, how do you guys think about kind of prioritizing and managing your time between kind of those two businesses?
Hmm. I think for me, like it starts a bit with just being realistic about your bandwidth, which it can be like a contentious topic a little bit because especially on social media, there's a lot of um, people don't always like the realistic view, and you're supposed to have like these crazy goals and just be burning the candle on both ends and everything like that. And I think there's something to be said about, you know, having your big, crazy, audacious goals for like decades plus, like your life, but then on the day-to-day basis, like short-term realistic and long-term realistic, I think are two slightly different things. So for me, really actually being really aware of my bandwidth on a day-to-day basis and not overloading too much has been really helpful. Because when I first started, I'd, always be stretching. Like I'm gonna get all this stuff done. It's like these huge lists. And then I wouldn't get it done. And I started drilling into habit of like not getting through my lists. Like it became normalized, if you know what I mean?
I
Which
know
was
exactly.
yeah. So and that was really detrimental. So what I started doing is I have basically 1 to 3 max kind of priorities for each day. And then I have like bonus stuff. I'm like, hey, if you get all that done, um, and this is for my personal business. Work is kind of like its own separate thing. But at least for the side business, with the limited time I have for it, I try to keep it like to 1 to 3 kind of main things, as opposed to overloading. And then find, you can, once you build momentum with that, you get in a really good groove and can be pretty productive. But that's been one thing for me, just being realistic, looking at my day, being like, how much time, like when am I going to work on it? Like, so, okay, I have 2 to 3 hours in the morning here, or I maybe have the hour midday, have the 90 minutes in the evening, and like planning that out in advance, then being realistic about like what can I actually get done in that time, then creating a plan around it.
I think especially, I mean, I'm on the same train as you there. I mean, yeah, I could get this entire list done and, breaking down saying, oh yeah, I'm able to record all this content, write all my tweets, edit everything, make this podcast, edit it all today. But in terms of productivity, in terms of focus, there's zero shot I'm able to do 8 hours of work in a row and not lose focus or lose productivity. And at that point, towards the end of it, it's going to be sloppy. It's not just going to be good. And so I think definitely being able to space it out and being able to put your big priority tasks. Then after that, let's say I have extra half an hour. Okay, I can record this one video or I can edit it, and that's good. And that will be a very productive day compared to trying to record and edit 15 of them on top of everything else I have to do.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think for me, like one thing that I've done, it sounds like pretty similar to what you guys are saying, but I have these like power lists every day, and it's basically a lot of times just kind of like the same thing over and over again because it's like the kind of same repetitive tasks that I need to do every single day. But it'll be things like sending out DMs and like replying to comments on my posts and things like that. But yeah, like I think having things that are like you want it to like having it so that you're able to actually finish everything every day is really important, because if you don't actually finish everything, it's kind of like you just build up you kind of like beat yourself up about it, and you build up these kind of negative mental like pathways or mental habits that in reality, like you maybe if you just cut the list down to like maybe 4 or 5 or even less like really important things that you need to do, then it'd be much easier and you'd feel better about it. And then kind of like after a certain point, everything else that you get done is bonus. So I'm with you guys there.
Yeah, 100%.
Cool. And then a few other questions I wanted to ask. I think just kind of because we're around the holiday season, Christmas is coming up, New Year's is coming up. I think this month in particular, December, is a really, really tough one for fitness. I think probably not only for existing clients, like making sure they're staying on track and getting results, also probably like new clients, potential new clients, like maybe being less likely to sign up for a program right now just because they want to push it off till the new year or whatever. Like, I guess what are some tips, or like what are some kind of some challenge that you guys are kind of seeing, and as far as people kind of maybe pushing the goals off to the new year, or like not really taking action on their fitness goals right now.
Yeah, well, there's no doubt this time of year is challenging for a number of reasons. Yeah, I think as far as like the pushing off, I think there's always going to be reasons for why a future time is better to start something, right? Whether it's your fitness goals, and we see that play out every year. Basically, the gyms get really busy for a little while in January when everyone's kind of they've been pushing off their fitness goals for however long, and now there's this influx of people for a short period of time, and it's usually died right back down come like the first or second week of February. So I think there's that idea that's really easy to have, which is that this future point is going to be easier for some reason, because and there's lots of excuses for that around this time of year, so it makes it even easier to get into it, because it's like, oh well, my in-laws aren't going to be around, my parents aren't going to be feeding me everything in sight, there's not going to be as many events, I'll be drinking less, so like January is going to be easier, everything's going to settle down. But that's just one example of that perpetual cycle you can get yourself into, because if you allow yourself to adopt that train of thought, there's always going to be instances in your life where you can look at a future point and be like, you know what, well, starting just after this project at work is actually going to be better, or I'll start once I've been not sleeping super well, so let me just get that done first, or just whatever it is, right? I'm just going to start later. And I think you can literally like sabotage your goals for years doing that. So Yeah, I think it is. There are some challenges in December, but ironically, that actually makes it the best time to start something like this, because if you can figure it out now, if you can figure it out when you think you have a challenging time in your life, then I mean, you've just made a more robust solution that can actually withstand some of life's curveballs, right? Whereas when you figure out this perfect solution, when everything's going, you have tons of free time, there's no challenges, that's the solution that's going to crack when you have some pressure on you. So I think counterintuitively, like this is probably the best time of year to get your fitness going, but not everyone sees it like that.
Yeah, I definitely think now is the best time because whenever people do get busy, the first thing they always cut out is the gym, it's their nutrition. They're always like, oh, well, I've lost 5 pounds this month. So I'm able to, take the next month off and I'll still be down 5 pounds. But in reality, whenever you do get busy, if the first thing you do cut out is your fitness, you're more likely to just not start back, or you're just going to lose so much progress to where it's at the point where you're like, oh, well, I don't see the point of it. I'm not motivated. I don't have any reason to want to go anymore. But if you decide to start when you're busy, it's going to be a lot easier to manage your time and figure out the progress you truly want to see. So whenever you do get to the months of you being slower, you're able to really dial down everything and progress even further upon where you're at.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. I think it's like too, you know, and I was talking to Colin about this earlier before we actually started the recording. Like, if like this is the time of the year, right, that like is going to be probably the most difficult as far as staying on track with your fitness and your nutrition goals and going to the gym consistently and all that. Like, wouldn't this be probably the best time of the year to actually make that commitment? Because if you're able to get through this period, then it's like you can do everything. Like if you have, and if, especially like if we're talking about in the context of like a coaching program, like if you have help and support through that kind of a period, it's like, okay, like that's probably when you need it the most, right? Like you don't necessarily need it when it's January and you're feeling super motivated. I mean, obviously, I'm sure there's a lot of people that will still benefit in that time too, but like people I think would benefit a lot more by getting it during that really kind of tough stretch of like probably Christmas-ish through like New Year's-ish when there's
Yeah.
a lot of other stuff going on. So I don't know. I think too, like there's something to be said. Like people oftentimes just like push, and this isn't even necessarily like a Christmas or New Year's thing. It's like people oftentimes just push things down the road. And like they'll say, oh, like maybe it's like the summer and they're like, oh, I have this vacation coming up and I'll start after that. Or like, maybe it's I don't know, maybe it's like April or whatever, and they have I don't know. Like there's always going to be a reason why people can kind of push things off. It's like, okay, if we don't wait till after Christmas, then we wait till after Valentine's Day. Or if we don't wait till after Valentine's Day, we wait till after Easter, right? So it's kind of like there's always something, right? But I guess, yeah. I mean, I guess the thing is, right? Like there's never going to be a perfect time to start anything, whether it's fitness, whether it's starting your business, whether it's I don't know, like there's a million other things, right? Like there's never going to be that perfect time. So it's almost always like in anything in life, whether it's fitness or not, like starting now and taking action now, even if you don't feel 100% like you're ready, right? Like that's probably the time when you most should take action. Like I think the old saying is like, yeah, the best time to start was yesterday, but the next best time to start is today.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's never going to be a perfect time to start, but you'll be able to justify procrastinating by imagining there's a perfect time to start forever.
Yeah.
Basically, you'll do all these mental gymnastics to find these reasons. So like, it's going to be perfect in anything from like Monday to 2 months from now. You'll find these little stupid reasons to justify to yourself why it makes sense, like why it's the perfect amount of time or for some reason. But I think if we're honest with ourselves, and I've done that before, I think most people to some degree have. And yeah, I think it's mostly just complete bullshit when you can actually look in and be recognize that within yourself. Like it's not going to get easier. So if it's important to you, you
Yeah,
should just probably do it right now.
absolutely. And I think like, the business analogy for that is I'll just ask you guys, like, when you started your business, or when you decided like, what, I want to be a coach, or I want to do this, like, was it probably the perfect time for you, or was it just something that you just did and you're like, I want to do this, I've been thinking about doing this, I'm just going to do it, right? Like, probably more the latter, right, for you guys?
Yeah, I just dove straight in. I was like, I mean, I sent the email to my counselor saying I was done. I was like, well, like, fuck, I have to start now. I can't push off till next week. I can't wait until a new month or anything. I have no money coming in right now, and I don't have a degree that I'm going after. So it's now or never ultimately for me.
Yeah, I think same kind of thing. Like I was feeling that there was a lot going on. I didn't have a ton of time, but it just, you will make time for something, and you'll make the circumstances work for something that's important for you, and it's a priority. I think that's true pretty much, like, almost no matter what else is happening, like how hectic and busy you are, like when there's a priority in your life, you're gonna figure out a way to make it work.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And that's the biggest thing too, is I think like people just don't prioritize it when they should be prioritizing it, or like maybe they don't even realize uh how big of an issue it is, like if they don't prioritize it, right? Like, for a lot of people out there, it's like, you know they don't necessarily realize, like, if they're 50, 100 pounds overweight and they haven't taken action to, improve their fitness, it's like, their risk for cancer, heart attack, all these other conditions, it just goes through the roof. So it's really, for some people, like the best time to take action would have been not yesterday, but like maybe a year ago. But now the next best time is today. So it's yeah.
Well, and that's a good point too, and it's why I'm seeing that more, a lot of fitness content, because I think what you mentioned about like this, this is actually about your health long term. It's not just about necessarily how you look in a bathing suit, because I think it's easy to procrastinate on a six pack or something. And especially maybe you find yourself, you have been married for 20 years and you have kids. It's like, well, I don't really actually care about looking like Thor by the pool on my vacation. I'm happy enough. But when you can make the reason actually, it's like, no, we're trying to make it so that you can walk upstairs and like, support yourself for the
Yeah.
next 2 decades. Like that's actually what this is. It's not necessarily just about having abs. The more someone can realize that, I think the more they can understand that why this should be a priority, and actually the number one priority, like a very high priority in everyone's life, especially as you get older.
100%, 100%. Yeah, I'm with that for sure. And I think, yeah, it's like not everybody has to look like, Larry Wheels or Ronnie Coleman, right? But like, we like just being able to walk up and down stairs and not be winded, being able to actually have energy when you get home from work and your kids want to like hang out with you, or like, having, yeah, like I think it really, like, those are the things that really matter. And I don't think people, I think, like, to your point, like it's easy to procrastinate. Like if you're already in good shape and you just want to get like a six pack or whatever, it's like that's less of an important goal. But like if you're like somebody's way out of shape, and like, you want to make this change, maybe not even necessarily for you, but for the other people in your life who you care about, like, right, like that's really what it's all about to me. So and maybe one other question here, what we have here, Colin, is like, what's like one thing, like what's probably like the one thing that your clients or like the people you work with, like the kind of the one thing that they struggle with the most? Because I think it's, for different kind of subsets of the fitness space, it's like kind of there's different things that people struggle with. But like kind of like in your experience working with clients, like what do you feel like the biggest struggle has been that they've had?
I think overall it's a really common one, I think, for a lot of different people and client bases, but just navigating the moments when life changes and when your schedule changes and things get unpredictable. That kind of ties back to what we were talking about around the holidays, right? And Colin, you made a good point about like, when you figure it out during a time that's more challenging, that sort of becomes your standard. And then during an easier time, I mean, then it's like that much more smooth sailing. Then you can dial in on like even getting better results, doing more optimization, having a better experience with it. but you'll still be able to have a system that will work for you when things are when you're busier, there's extra challenges in your life. And I think just this presents itself in a variety of ways, but for clients, it's maybe, a friend's out of town and comes to visit. Now there's like alcohol and meals out, or, we've got a wedding this weekend. We have um, parents are coming to visit. We're going away for a little bit, vacation, like all these moments, and kind of having strategies and systems in place to, not have to live like a monk necessarily, and not have any fun during these moments, but to also understand that you still need a system, and you still need to be thinking about your routine and overall health during these times, that, like, for most people in the way they live, these times are too common to afford to be able to just like completely turn off for them, right? Like every weekend away, vacation, person coming to visit, whatever the kind of curveball life can throw at you. I mean, most people have fairly active lives. They have social lives. They have parties and events and dinners and trips and all these sorts of things. And I think there's a natural inclination to like turn off fitness and be like, it'll come back on Monday. It'll come back next week. Whereas I think part of becoming somebody who stays fit and healthy for the long run, and who is able to continue progress and not continually repeat this frustrating cycle of falling out of routines and having to, like, you know, endure that process of getting back into it. One of the biggest things, one of the biggest kind of skills you can develop is to not stop turning it off, basically, to stay consistent, at least to some degree, with your habits through all these times. And I find that's what clients tend to struggle with and need support with. So they're going away. It's like, okay, we'll take some resistance bands. We'll do a resistance band workout in your hotel for these 2 days to keep
Yeah.
that routine up. Let's
Yeah.
talk about how we're going to approach ordering in restaurants, make sure we hit our protein goal, stuff like that. Like, when are we going to go for walks to make sure we're going to hit at least 8K, at least 10K steps, those sort of things, that you're still thinking about it, even throughout all these potentially challenging situations. And I think that's a huge thing that I've really seen from my clients.
Yeah, absolutely. Colin's son, what do you think has been the toughest thing for your clients? Then I'll go at the end.
Yeah, I think the toughest part, I mean, especially right now is, I mean, with Christmas coming up, they're always like, man, like, I just feel so stressed out. Like, I got to get my girlfriend, her parents, my siblings, my parents, all of them gifts. And like, they're severely stressed out. And I'm just like, all right, let's take a step back and figure out, like, okay, how long does it truly take to buy a gift? And they're like, oh, well, if I know what they want, it takes, the however long it takes to swipe the card ultimately. Like, okay, so we'll just take a step back from where we're at. We'll understand what's causing the stress and how we can get these gifts, done, get them situated, and we can go upon where you're feeling after that. And it's just a matter of just taking a step back and ultimately just breathing and figuring out what we're going to do to move on from the stress and how we can get past it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I think stress is one that definitely a lot of my clients deal with, and I'm sure other Colin Matson, I'm sure some of your clients deal with that too. But I think the biggest challenge that I see is oftentimes like kind of similar to what you were saying, Colin, about like how kind of life gets in the way sometimes, or things just get busy or chaotic. And it's like, you know, I think one thing that's really helped a lot of my clients is having kind of like backup plans and things you can kind of go to when, maybe plan A doesn't work. It's like, okay, we go to plan B or plan C. And a lot of times the hard part about that too is like, if you're a client, um, oftentimes it's like, if you make a mistake, or if you miss a workout, or if you have like a day where you don't eat super healthy or whatever, it's like maybe you're a little bit more reluctant to kind of report that to your coach, and to tell them that that's like kind of what's going on. But what I was going to say, I think like Colin Matson, you said something earlier that really like totally reminded me of like stuff that I do with my clients too, which is like, if they're on a trip for a weekend or something, or if they, are going to be eating fast food for a few days, like finding ways to kind of make that as optimal as possible, and just kind of adapting and iterating on the fly, right? Like the kind of the message there is, it's like, it's always, there's always going to be, things in life that come up, or there's always going to be, things that aren't always 100% optimal, but it's all about just kind of doing the best you can with what you have. And if you're able to do that and consciously make that decision to do that, then that's going to really be, that's going to be the secret to long-term success. So
Yeah, super well said, because it can easily become this all or nothing thing where someone's like, well, I don't have the resources at my disposal to execute this perfectly.
yeah,
So I'm going to say, fuck it, right? Like,
yeah,
and fast food is a good example of that. Like, I often will write my clients fast food menus where I try to even take McDonald's and be like, here's like 7 things you can order that are
yeah,
less than 1,000 calories and over 50 grams of protein. Kind of
yeah,
have that idea. Like, I can even go to McDonald's and I can still get something that's like not terrible. I don't have to get like,
100%.
2 apple pies and a large soda and supersized fries and everything. Just go off the train because it's McDonald's, it's fast food.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I don't know. Have either of you guys had In-N-Out before?
No, I haven't.
No, okay.
Yeah.
Colin's on no. Okay, so it's big on the West Coast. So like one of my clients, basically a very similar scenario to what you just said, Colin. Like he was eating In-N-Out a lot, and like he was like, I was like, dude, like, look, we can keep eating In-N-Out, but like we just got to make sure we're making a little bit of healthier choices. So it's like, for example, like what we did was instead of getting like the burger with a ton of condiments and like the bun and a bunch of fries on the side, it's like, okay, you could do a burger with like a lettuce wrap for a bun, and then you could get like double on the meat so that you're actually getting more protein, and like don't get the fries on the side, and like this is probably going to fill you up more and be way healthier. So like I think this is kind of a win-win for you. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think people fall into the trap of it being all or nothing, and it really doesn't need to be all or nothing. And I think especially around the holidays, like this is as good of a time as ever to talk about this. Like people, like having those backup plans, and like whether it's like even if like your gym is closed for Christmas or New Year's or whatever, and you can't get your workout in, like just going for like a walk or like doing like a quick at home body weight routine, or like if you're not going to be able to eat like your normal like breakfast, like having like a kind of a backup in place, or like whatever it might be, just like knowing that even if you're not 100% perfect at this time of the year, it's really it's really okay. So
Yeah. Making an effort at consistency is much better than just, turning it off completely and then falling into the all or nothing trap.
absolutely, absolutely, cool. Yeah, well, I think those are pretty much all the questions that I had for you, Colin. Colin Sen, did you have any other questions?
I don't have any other questions.
Cool. Well, we can probably just call it here, I guess. Colin Matson, it was great having you on, man. I'm glad we got to chat. And I hope for those of you watching this, I hope you guys learned some valuable info about fitness, about navigating the holidays, and kind of just staying on track for your goals, no matter what life kind of throws your way. So,
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. It was great.
absolutely, no problem.